All right. So thanks a lot. Thanks to Verilyn for inviting me for this talk. This is I find it very interesting and very nice campus here and very nice setup. Everything is very high tech. Coming from grad school in academia, it's a very high tech. So thank you so much. Today I'm going to talk about self-powered IoT devices and the driving force behind these IoT devices is ultra low power circuits and the system design techniques. So before I go and go into the details, I just want to like give a little bit of, I guess everybody knows about it, but IoT is one of the very promising technology, and it's basically an idea of connecting everyday objects, making them smart with integrated electronics. So we are going to talk about this particular topic and how the device design is coming to picture or is evolving. So, so the Internet of Things has actually taken off. Today we are looking at the expected is like 250 billion devices by 2020. We are here, and this is pretty much accurate. So if you look at this graph, it is based on the real numbers so far and the predicted numbers over here. In 2017, we were at what 20 to 23 billion connected devices already to internet. So it is on the hockey stick curve, and it's gonna follow that curve. So what's what's uh, what's happening with electronics when so many devices are going to get connected? How are we going to design it? What are the design principles? So before we go all about like how many devices are going to get connected, let's look at one of the key challenge. One of the key challenges is powering IoT devices. If you have so many devices in the network, how are you going to power it? Are you going to power it with batteries? One of the studies shows that if you have a trillion device that are connected that are powered by batteries, uh, even if the batteries have 10-year lifetime, the maintenance challenge is that you will need 275 million battery replacement every day. So powering from battery, even though you can power a device for 10 years, if the number of devices are trillions, you're looking at millions of battery replacement every day within 10 years. So that's a huge maintenance challenge and probably not the way to go forward. The second one is, can you run wires? The devices are so many that it is almost impossible to run wires to them. And the third one is like making these devices energy independent, so that they can run on their own. You don't need maintenance. You can just you can deploy it and forget it. And that is probably one of the best more accepted way or envisioned way to power electronics. And so, what are the key challenges when we power IoT devices by energy harvesting? So what are the sources that that we can traditionally look into? So, for example, light solar is an example. You can harvest energy from solar cells. Then vibration, motion, because of motion, you can excite piezoelectric material, generate electrical energy. Radio frequency. I think it's a little bit overblown. It's usually not that much energy available in RF to harvest, but it is still like it's still a method to harvest energy from the ambient RF sources. Thermoelectric is a temperature difference between either body and ambient temperature, or one source and the other source. So two particular temperature gradients. So again, so those are some of the ways we can harvest energy. And again, like going back to the first point, if you instead of energy harvesting, if you power it with batteries, then you're looking at 10-year, even with 10-year battery lifetime, 275 million battery replacement. So we do need these IoT devices to run from harvested energy. The question is how much, okay? So how much is where our power consumption is. So right now, the power consumption of even the lowest power microcontroller is tens of milliwatt with radio communication, okay? And so what is the power that is available? So the power that is available is solar is 10 to 100 microwatt in a small form factor. TEG 10 to 100 microwatt in a small form factor. RFID, RF is 100 nanowatt on a good day. 10 micro to 100 micro again in a TEG. These are rough number, depending on the size, the source, environment, it can vary. But like people typically talk in this ballpark is what you see. And this is 1,000 times lower than MSPs are running on. If you try to build a system with all the features that you want to have in an IoT device, you are looking at milliwatts, tens of milliwatt of power. So, so this is a significant challenge, and so the gap that exists between the ambient power sources and the power consumption of electronics today is significantly large. And this talk is about how we overcome that gap through ultra-low power circuit design. So, so with this, the outline of my talk is energy harvesting system on a chip. So I'll briefly describe about the energy harvesting system on a chip, which we did. Kannan was in grad school with me, and we were in different campuses, but we worked on this self-powered chip. Then I'll talk about what has happened since then, what we have worked on, how the energy flows in an energy harvesting system. So briefly talk about future works, some of the example designs that we have. So so let's talk about the energy harvesting chip. So this was a body sensor network. So this is our design evolved. So we started from a body sensor network back in grad school. This is an example of an IoT system where you have different sensors that are placed on a human body, and they are going to monitor different physiological sensing. So, for example, on this subject, you have an ECG sensor, pancreatic sensor, artificial blood pressure sensor, etc. They're all put on a human subject, and they're not wired. So they are harvesting energy from the temperature difference between the body temperature and room temperature, and they are communicating with a body area aggregator, which in this case can be a cell phone. And in the event of a medical emergency, for example, if suppose the patient is suffering from AFib, then the processor on the sensor can identify there is an AFib event going on and can communicate to the body area aggregator, which is a cell phone, which can communicate to a remotely located aggregator caregiver to intervene. That's this envisioned system. So the way this one sensor design looked like was this, and this was a big big effort that I was in grad school at that time along with Kannan, and we developed this ultra low power system on a chip. This has you can see an analog front end, an ADC, microcontroller for digital processing, TX and RF. So the front end is going to keep monitoring the ECG. Keep monitoring the ECG. The ADC will digitize. The microcontroller will do the bunch of processing, and then the radio communication happens only if there is an event. So that you want to save power, it's not continuously communicating. The power was delivered using energy harvester from thermoelectric generator. It was harvesting power by using the temperature difference between the body temperature and room temperature, and this was enough to power this whole system. Okay, this was back in 2012, a few years ago. We did this. Now looking at this from energy harvesting point of view, or from a self-powered design point of view. So what are the key challenges? From application side, you have to perform sensing and communication. But in order to save really, or in order to make this really low power, you want to have an ultra low power analog signals processing from the front end. Then the digital processing has to happen in sub-threshold so that you save a lot of power. Finally, low power RF communication. So that's the power consumption side of it. From the energy harvesting side of it, you want to harvest energy as efficiently as possible so that you can maximize the amount of energy that is there. So this is pretty much what an outlook looks like for an IoT node. Now, if you look at the system from energy flow point of view, so we're talking about power, how the energy is going from different stages. So we have this overall flow system for energy. We have an ambient source, which can be solar, thermoelectric generator, TEG, etc. We harvest energy. This harvested energy is stored on a capacitor. It can be a storage capacitor, battery, etc. But you typically harvest energy and store it at one particular buffer, which you can use for different applications. Then followed by this is power management. So the power management is going to deliver different voltages for system processing, which can power the radios, the ADC, the digital, etc. But all these typically have different voltage specifications. You want different power supplies on the chip. So the energy is coming from an ambient source and is going all the way for the consumption of processing and system processing and communication. So the question is, as you can see that there are different steps in the flow of energy, and these steps are very critical because you need to identify exactly where you need to optimize in this flow. So the first step is you're going to harvest energy from an extremely low ambient sources. So you want to make sure that you harvest from lowest power voltage sources. So that's the first, and this is to this is in conjunction with efficient harvesting. So not only you harvest from lowest power, lowest voltage sources, but you also harvest it very efficiently so that you don't lose energy along the way. And this is done to maximize the amount of energy that you can send it to the system. So that's the first step. This particular stage has a specification which is very clear: lowest power, lowest voltage harvesting, very efficient harvesting, maximize the amount of energy that goes into the system. Now, typically you can see like very efficient harvesting, but they don't work at say 10 millivolt, 20 millivolt, right? So that's what you want to use, because in this application space you will see 10 millivolt, 20 millivolt kind of voltages. Now the voltage is stored on a capacitor. Now this is stored voltage is your buffer. So you want to make use of whatever power that is available on this storage capacitor. It sounds trivial, but a lot of times these electronic circuits, they cannot turn on after a certain voltage, or before you reach a certain threshold voltage, they cannot operate. So that's like leaving a lot of energy on the table, not making use of that. So you want to minimize this voltage, make sure that you can operate everything at low voltage, as little voltage as possible. So this is done to make use of every amount of energy that you have harvested. So that's the second stage. Now, so power management circuits, these are used to generate different volt power supplies for the chip. So again, there is a flow, there is a change of hand in energy changing from one form to another. So you want to make sure every amount of energy that you're transferring is lossless, ideally, but there is some efficiency loss again in this stage. So you want to minimize that loss. And again, how you design your power delivery circuits is very important. Like, for example, can you use an LDO? Can you use a switched capacitor regulator? Can you use a DC-DC converter? So all that factor plays in, and all these steps. It is important because all these steps that you're following is getting multiplied. It's a cascaded system. Every loss is like getting multiplied. So 80% into 80% is 60%, into 80% is 50%. So you lost 50% of energy in this three stage. So it's very important to look at all these this flow of energy. Now, minimize the loss in voltage conversion. That's there. Now, from processing point of view, okay, again, this is the end use of your energy. So you want to minimize the power consumption in this stage as well. Although I'm not going to talk much about this particular topic, briefly touch upon it. But you want to make sure the radios are ultra low power, subthreshold digital, low power sensing circuits, etc. Finally, these systems often spend a lot of time in idle mode. So for example, you are harvesting energy, you are doing a bunch of stuff, then you go in idle mode, then you again come back. So there is an idle time. And in that idle time, there is an overhead. The system is still running, consuming power. How do you go about reducing that? So that's the final stage. So we will also talk about reducing power consumption on this idle mode as well. So this is the whole structure, and this is the whole process. I say this is how the energy is consumed in an IoT device, which are self-powered, and how do you go about, optimizing at each stage. Okay. So the first step is energy harvesting. So on this, we have worked on very low voltage energy harvesting. So we did this TEG. So TEG is so again, like in energy harvesting from an ambient source, there are a couple of things that you need to do. You need to match the impedance of your energy harvester with your source, and the reason is that typically these energy harvesters are high impedance. So this is an example of TEG. You can see that TEG is open. So power consumption versus power output from a TEG versus current in milliamp, and you can see that there is a maximum power point that exists. Typically for thermoelectric generator, it's 50% of their open circuit voltage. So you want to operate this TEG at the maximum power point first, so that you're taking the maximum power coming in, but you're also taking the energy out of it. So in that voltage conversion, in that harvesting, you need to maximize the efficiency as well. So we did both of this in this design. So we have a maximum power point tracking circuit. So this circuit dynamically keeps track of maximum power point of TEG, and then it also does this boost converter. Here you can see the boost converter, so that it is tracking the energy and it's doing the boost conversion. So we did this, and we were able to operate this TEG. This is the architecture. Sorry, this is the architecture of the boost converter. It has a bunch of stuff. Not going into much detail. It has a startup circuit. It has a maximum power point track circuit. It has a novel control circuit with high side and low side that is used for energy harvesting. It can be started from RF. 30 stage RF is here, that you can excite from 9 or 15 megahertz to 2.4 gigahertz. In that band, you can pick up and start the circuit as well from there as well as from a startup circuit over here. So 2 modes to start up, and all that it can do, and it can harvest from 10 millivolt, which is the lowest reported voltage for energy harvesting. This is so this guy harvests from 10 millivolt input voltage. So very small temperature difference, less than 0.2 degrees centigrade, will result into 10 millivolt, which can be used to harvest energy. So at this voltage, we were able to harvest. Our efficiency at 10 millivolt was around 20%, and we are looking at ways to improve that. So we can go up to 70%, 50 to 70% in that particular voltage range. At 300 millivolt, we were seeing 75%, sorry, 84%, 75% at 100 millivolt. So very efficient, targeted design for harvesting energy from low input voltage sources, very low input voltage sources. So this was done to maximize the available energy. That is the first step, that you bring in as much as possible on the table. So then moving forward, so we have this flow again. Looking at this, we harvested from very low voltage, we maximized energy, and then you're going to look at this low voltage operation for system power consumption. Okay. So this is a very important point again in the design of IoT devices which are self-powered. Typically, you will see in literature that a lot of power delivery circuits will give you a very high efficiency number, 90%, 95%. But no one really talks about at what voltage they're starting up, and it's very critical, because when you start harvesting, you are actually putting in some energy on the capacitor, and that energy is not used unless the system turns on. So that is like a waste, basically. It's not being used. It's like where you put the tap in your tank, and you would say at the bottom, because you want to get all the water out. But in ICs, that's not possible, because there are a bunch of other circuits that needs to turn on, and those are like limiting factor. So this idea was to minimize this voltage as little as possible. So one of the key components that is used in ICs is reference voltage, and reference voltages are typically are the first to turn on, are something that becomes first valid even after only which other system can turn on. Reference is the first meter on the circuit. The reference voltage will turn on, then only your power supply can turn on. So reference voltage is very important, and that's the first one of the topics that we worked on. So conventional band gap reference circuit, going a little bit into detail of the circuit design. This is a bandwidth structure, and this is a conventional band gap circuit. And the minimum operating voltage of this circuit is 750 millivolt, reported in literature. I mean, ideally, practically, you can design at 900 millivolt, but below that, it becomes very difficult to design that. But people have reported lower than that. But it is limited by 2 factors, and the one is the base emitter voltage of a BJT and the drain source voltage of a current source, right? Typically, the drain source voltage is going to be 200 millivolt, and the base emitter voltage is going to be 650 to 700 millivolt. So you're looking at 900 millivolt. Now this is a popular structure which is used in different ways, but there are 2 things. If you want to minimize the power, you can see that the minimum power is VBE by resistor divided by the resistor, right? So if you want 100 nanowatt, you're looking at tens of mega ohm resistor, which is a huge area. So that's another secondary problem. It's a big design as well for lower power. And if you don't want to spend area, then you have to pay power, basically. So there's directly. So we worked on this reference voltage design, which can not only operate from 500 millivolt, 32 nanowatt, extremely low power, extremely low voltage, but is also is also lower area as well. So low power, low voltage, but also lower area. And we used we came up with this different method completely. It's a biasing method. Instead of using current source to bias the BJT device, we used a charge pump cell. And this was presented at ISSCC a couple of years ago. and we were able to bias it using a charge pump, basically. And then we generate VEV voltage. So effectively, it cuts down the minimum operating voltage to VEV by 2, which is 350 millivolt. So instead of 900 millivolt, now you can operate the circuit at 350 millivolt. So we can now turn the whole system on at 400 millivolt, which was earlier 900 millivolt. So this brings in a lot of energy now available for system processing and communication, right? So that's one step that we eliminated for system design. And that again guides like what you really need to get to the point that you want to. So this was 32 nanowatt, 400 millivolt operating, etc. Now voltage regulators. So for example, so oftentimes you will see that LDOs are used in design, low dropout voltage regulators. Now, suppose if you need 1.2 volts for your LDO, which was, by the way, something that we used on our 2012 chip, 1.2 volt LDO. So our starter voltage was 1.35 volts. So the system cannot turn on below 1.35 volts, right? So the question is whether LDO can be used if you really want your system to start up at 400 millivolt, 500 millivolt to generate a voltage that is 1.2 volts. Probably not. So what is the most efficient way to power different circuits on the chip? So we explored a lot of options, and we found out that we need multiple voltages, we need very efficient voltages, very efficient power conversion, right? So we worked on this single inductor multiple output buck boost structure. So what it would do is that it would generate multiple output voltages in DC-DC configuration, which will give you very good efficiency. And because it is buck boost structure, so it can give you both high or low voltages, as high or as low voltage as you want. Like you can still start up from 400 millivolt. Suppose your storage voltage goes to 1.5 volts and you need 1.2 volts. The buck boost structure would still be able to support that. So this configuration solves all the three problems basically. It gives you higher efficiency, so the voltage power loss is eliminated. The starter voltage is reduced to 400 millivolt, and buck boost structure is also SIMO structure, single inductor multiple output, can give you 3 or 4 power supplies that you want. So we did this design, and we presented this in I think it was BioCast, I think Biomedical Circuits and System journal, and so that was the second part of power delivery. So we were effectively able to start the whole system at 500 millivolt, and that was a significantly big jump from 1.35 to all the way going down to 500 millivolt. That would save you so much energy. So finally, the power management. So the power management, we talked about power management. So right, single inductor multiple output. It maximizes the use of available energy because you're making use of everything that is stored, and it is minimizing the loss in voltage conversion. LDOs typically have 80% efficiency, depending on what is the ratio. If it is 100 millivolt, probably you can look at 90%, but then you have to give up on other factors. Practically speaking, you're looking at like 60-70% efficiency, so a lot of loss. And multiple regulated voltages were also supported. Slight deviation from that. So we talked about we talked about a boost converter and a buck converter and a single inductor multiple output buck boost structure, right? So we can also combine all of them together into one design. We can use one inductor and generate an energy harvester as well as multiple output voltages, so that you don't spend real estate or inductors, multiple inductors on the system design. So this was something that I did was published in 2014. This is work. You can see that it has an energy harvester integrated, which is showing the path of energy flowing from a solar cell onto the storage, which was a 5-volt storage. It can go all the way up to 5 volts, and then generating 3 regulated output voltages, 3.3 to 1.2 volts and 1.5 volts. So this is another way of recombining things in single inductor multiple output ways to generate multiple regulated output voltage, as well as enable harvesting as well. A big advantage is that, of course, you reduce another inductor, so save cost. And we can also think about doing this kind of structure in switched capacitor converter way so that you can save even on that inductor. There are trade-offs with energy, but I'm not going to talk in detail about that. So in the flow of energy, we looked at, we are able to harvest maximum amount of energy, and we were able to bring down the operating voltages. We were able to make efficient power management so that we don't lose energy, and operate the system at lower power level, which we are not going to talk about in much detail, but reduce the processing power by having radios at lower power, subthreshold digital communication, and lower power sensing circuit. Finally, we are going to look at this idle mode power consumption. So this is another important topic for the IoT devices. So how does a system operation typically look like? This is in an IoT devices which are powered by energy harvesting and has a much higher power consumption when they are operating their radios. The typical operation looks like when you will wake up, the system will turn on, so the power consumption goes up, then the CPU will turn on, which will further increase the power consumption. Finally, you will enable the sensing portion of it, which will be analog sensing. That is another few milliwatt, the power consumption goes up further. Finally, radio communication, receiving and communicating that. Significantly high power, you are looking at milliwatts. You can quickly do communication and then stop doing communication, go back to sleep, wait for the system to turn on again. It is either done by real-time clock or by external interrupt, which can be a wake-up radio or event-driven. But you actually spend a lot of time in the sleep mode so that you can harvest energy and come back up again so that you can again do the communication. So you can see that the bottom line here, is this real-time clock. And if this real-time clock power consumption or other components power consumption goes up, then the overall system lifetime will decrease because the power consumption is even in the idle mode matters. So as an example, we did this 32 kilohertz crystal oscillator. Crystal oscillator, everybody knows, is an electromechanical resonator. It's very good for keeping time, very stable. So 32.768 kilohertz is used because that is 2.2 to the power 15, which is very easy to divide and go back to 1 second. So its power consumption should be very low. Okay. So we designed this sub-threshold crystal oscillator. This is the lowest power crystal oscillator that is reported in literature. It has a power consumption of 2.1 nanowatt for a 32 kilohertz crystal oscillator. When it is not, when it is operating in this mode at low voltage operating point, but we can further reduce the power consumption utilizing the fact that crystal oscillators are extremely high quality. So and the reason why I'm saying is that because even if you suppose you have made a crystal oscillator to operate and run, and it is running, and then you remove the power supply, the oscillation is not going to die away right away because crystals are so high Q. It takes several cycles to dissipate the energy that is stored inside the crystal over its ESR. So that fact can be utilized to save power further. So we did this duty cycling. And the duty cycling technique is that you turn on a crystal, let it go, let it charge up, and then slowly, and for time being, you remove the power. And so that it will start dying because there is no source to support. But it will take a lot of time before it goes to a really low voltage. But in that period, you can again turn it back on again, and so you can keep doing that. And you can have this clock, running, which will turn it on and turn it off, which is called the duty cycle clock here. And you can see that when it is removed, we were consuming 900 picowatt, and 2.1 nanowatt when it was on. And effectively, the power consumption was further brought down to 1.5 nanowatt. Again, the lowest power that is out there. And you can see this measurement result. This is running at 1.5 nanowatt, 32.768 kilohertz standard, and the whole circuit design. But there are a bunch of circuits that you need to run, calibrate, etc. But now it's not like you have to do real-time calibration. It's just one time you put it in a factory, the circuit runs, finds out what is the voltage where I should enable the clock, what is the voltage where I should disable the clock, and the free running clock can be operated. So this was the crystal oscillator part of it. So if you look at this again on the plot, our goal was to maximize energy, which we did by harvesting at lowest power, lowest voltage possible. We operated the system at lowest voltage possible, that was 500 millivolt. We made efficient, minimize the loss by efficient voltage conversion by using single inductor, multiple output DC-DC converters over linear regulators, LDOs. We have actually done a lot of work on that side as well. We have improved the power consumption of the system by having low power radios, low power sensing, etc. And finally, the real-time clock was one of the components that was used to reduce the duty cycling power in the idle mode. So how do we quantify the benefits of all of it put together into a system design? If you have all these thought processes, design principles that are built into system design, how do you quantify, or what is the way to really look at the benefits of lifetime? So we go back to this curve, right? And different applications have different needs, but this is like you can assume that this is a structure in which IoT devices operate. So for example, they will wake up, CPU will turn on, analog will turn on, radio communication will happen, they will go to sleep, wait, come back up, etc., etc. Now, one of the key factor here is that duty cycling, right? Some system may want to have very high duty cycle, some may have very low duty cycle, and that depends on application. But the power is going to get dictated by how often or how less often you're going to do duty cycling. So that will give us a way to measure the benefits. So we did that. So this is one of the comparison points. So our first system was in blue. This was the old BSN system that we did. On the y-axis is the load current, and this is basically a representative of on x-axis is the load current, and which is a representative of how often you're duty cycling, right? If you're duty cycling very often, then your power consumption will be high. If your duty cycle is really low, power consumption will be low. And on y-axis is your operational lifetime. So you can see that when power consumption is high, when you're at low duty cycle, your lifetime is low, and then your lifetime increases as your duty cycling rate goes down. But it will hit a knee because you have the idle components that are keep consuming power. So there will be, after a point, you will not get any benefit of the duty cycling. But it gives you a construct around which you can really study the lifetime of a system. So we use this baseline system, and then we brought in all the design improvements that we did and try to figure out what is the benefit. So the curve in the black is the new proposed system, okay? And we use this, and we found that when we use all the principles, that we have brought in, and they have the same harvested amount energy, 1.5 volt on say 100 microfarad cap or a 8 millifarad cap, you have 1.8 volts, 1.5 volt power supply. And then you let both the system run with exactly same, blocks that are going to consume the same amount of power. You will find that this guy, the black guy had, the curve in the black had 4x higher lifetime. And not only that, when you go back to the idle mode power consumption, because we were operating the real-time clock, operating at lower voltages, operating band gap references at low power, low voltage, etc., our lifetime in idle mode was 70 times better. Okay, so these benefits we studied without factoring in the efficiency benefit and the low input voltage operation of the boost converter. So you can expect even higher power gains if you brought that into factor as well. So so this was used in the next generation of the IoT device, and we were able to design this big chip system on a chip, which had a bunch of accelerators, AFE again. The Open MSP was used, boost converter was used, clock again, the crystal oscillator was used, and then the radio was used. And we were able to run this IoT node at 6.45 microwatt average power, this was presented in 2015 as ISSCC again. We also use this design principle to power a low power Bluetooth wake up radio, and again, this was 236 nanowatt wake up radio. Energy harvesting was there. Crystal oscillator was used, and just this chip. The purpose of this chip was to provide a radio interrupt. So it sees a radio signal and then sends a turn on signal. So this was 236 nanowatt with energy harvesting and power management, etc. So we use these design principles to design a couple of IoT devices with a lot of success. So So looking at some of the future works, so one of the topics that one of the topics some of the topics that we are looking at. One is the energy harvesting. So at 10-20 milliwatt hour efficiency was like 10 to 20%, 20 to 30%. So we are going to try to increase that to 70 to 80%, so that you put a lot more energy available. That's one topic. Radio communication. Radios are one of the biggest power consumers. So how much power can we reduce for radio communication? Finally, external components. Some of the external components that we have used, like crystal oscillators, like inductors, etc. We would want to get rid of those and try to integrate as much as possible. So again, again from the system design perspective, these are very important topics or challenges that we need to solve for IoT devices. And also power first computer architecture. I keep talking about this. Is one of my pet projects. Is that historically the ICs have evolved as clock-driven design. Like you have multiple stages, you have clock pipeline, etc., etc., etc. But clock is the main essential feature about those systems. But that was when we were throughput constrained. The system, the evolution of these ICs are how can you improve the performance, and then suddenly people started talking about power. How about power being the first thing? You look at the power as the key defining architecture parameter instead of clock. Designing your whole architecture as power, you're looking at power of each block instead of what is the clock time, what is the setup time of this block, or what is the maximum clock that I can achieve, or what about the minimum power that this particular block can achieve, right? And then designing it in that way. So that's that's a more broad project that I'm looking at, this power first computer architecture. Some of the example designs. So this is one of the results of our ongoing project. So we are working on an on-chip clock source, which can get rid of the crystal oscillator, and it is achieving a performance of 5 ppm per degree C over a temperature range of -20 to 100 kilohertz. You can see 100 degrees centigrade. The frequency was 13.325 to 13.315, and you can see that in the range of interest, which is this range, typically, somewhere around 10 degrees to 60 degrees. It's a lot lower as well. So it's very good performance on chip clock source F1. Another one that we are looking at is a radio interface, so which can achieve -90 dBm performance, receive performance, and with a data rate of 200 kbps, 100 nanowatt radio simulation result. You can see here there is an output of a rectifier coming up, and then you can receive a signal at -81 dBm in the simulation. But we believe that we can go all the way up to -90, even higher. So that's again significantly lower. Right now at -90 dBm, you have milliwatts of power consumption. I mean, there are work which can show you -70 dBm, -60 dBm in nanowatt level, but at -90 you are looking at milliwatts, because they have to use PLL, etc., etc. We are not using all those.
Yeah, let me know. But I hope you have a good weekend.
Me too. Okay. So that summarizes that concludes my talk. So we have from the system design perspective, we wanted to maximize the energy harvesting. We wanted to maximize the input energy so that we can have a maximum energy through best energy harvesting. Power management circuit was very critical in design, because you lose a lot of energy in the power management stage. So you can use certain design techniques to improve your power management, like buck boost, single inductor, multiple output. Ultra low power crystal oscillator was an example of a real-time clock that can keep running at extremely low power. We also presented an on-chip solution which can also work at low voltage and low power levels. And system lifetime can be improved by bringing all these techniques up to 70 times in an example system, and further improvement in design and computer architecture was presented. Thank you so much.